Hello everybody, welcome back to another Thomas Apologia video. Today's video is going to be the first episode of our new series, Road to Christianity. Now, a lot of you messaged me asking me for basic, beginner knowledge, books to read and sources on Christianity. So I'm creating this series as a basic beginner's guide to the reasoning, philosophy and theology behind the Christian religion. Now, in this first episode, I'd like to touch on an idea that is permeated throughout pop culture, especially with regards to atheism, with the likes of Ricky Gervais, Sam Harris, Christopher Hitchens, Richard Dawkins, and the like. And it's just that, well, especially if you've grown up in England like me, you're likely either raised without religion or you scoffed at the idea whilst growing up. Or maybe you were raised with religion and many of your peers mocked you for that fact. I know that I certainly mocked a few people in my time as an atheist. And I mean, it's ridiculous, right? That a man in the sky exists, that Moses magically split the Red Sea, that a man rose from the dead. That's just impossible. It's just a fairy tale, right? And that's what this episode is going to be about. Is Christianity a fairy tale for adults? And what is the rationale behind these quote-unquote miracles? Does this not violate the laws of science? So I'd like to demonstrate this attitude by analysing the following clip.
Religion's greatest trick wasn't convincing some people that there was a God who was all-powerful. It was convincing everyone else that you couldn't ridicule that idea. I think it's very important you challenge your own beliefs. I mean that's what science does, really. It doesn't constantly try and prove itself right. It follows the evidence, whatever that is. It's the question I often get, that people say, well, you're an atheist, you're closed-minded. Well, no, I'm not. That's a strange thing to say. I think the opposite is true. I'm going to always follow the evidence, whatever that is. And they say things like, if someone proved to you God existed, would you believe? Well, of course I would, by definition. In fact, it would be the greatest scientific discovery of all time. Scientists would celebrate. They'd run round. At the moment, we have no evidence for the existence of any God or anything supernatural.
Now, the reason I chose to analyse this clip is not because I disagree that ideas should not be critically thought about, but because of the view that the investigation of the existence of God is a scientific endeavour. Now, for Aristotle and the likes, science is not limited to the scientific method, as even politics for Aristotle is considered to be a science. However, science in the context understood here, as Ricky Gervais has put it, is in reference to the study of the physical behaviour of the natural world. Now, God of course is beyond the study of the natural, as he is a supernatural being and outside the limited scope of what we call the scientific method. But wouldn't this just show that no one could prove God's existence? Isn't it all just faith? Well, the error of this line of thinking is an epistemic view known as scientism, which is the idea that all forms of intellectual inquiry must conform to the models of science in order to be rational. Dr. Edward Fazer, in his book Scholastic Metaphysics, A Contemporary Introduction, page 10, writes this about the epistemic view. First, as I have said, scientism faces a dilemma. It is either self-refuting or trivial. Take the first horn of the dilemma. The claim that the methods of science are the only reliable ways to secure knowledge of anything is not a scientific claim itself, not something that could be established using scientific claims. Indeed, that science is even a rational form of inquiry, let alone the only rational form of inquiry, is not something that can be established scientifically. For scientific inquiry rests on a number of philosophical assumptions: the assumption that there is a world external to the minds of scientists, the assumption that this world is governed by regularities of the sort that might be captured in scientific laws, the assumption that the human intellect and the perceptual apparatus can uncover and accurately describe these regularities, and so forth. Since the scientific method presupposes these things, it cannot attempt to justify them without arguing in a circle, and thus the view of scientism is circular and self-defeating. Now, if science is not the only rational method of exploring reality, how else may we do so? Well, we may also do so through philosophy. Philosophy coming from the Greek words philo, meaning love, and sophia, meaning wisdom, the love of wisdom. For example, consider this deductive philosophical argument that Socrates must be mortal. Premise 1, all men are mortal. Premise 2, Socrates is a man. Conclusion, therefore, Socrates is mortal. The same model of argumentation, however, could also be used to prove God's existence with the following syllogism. Premise 1, everything that is changing is being changed by something else. Premise 2, but the series of things changing cannot be infinitely long. Conclusion, therefore there must be a first cause of all change, which we call God, which is a syllogism of St. Thomas's first way laid out by Dr. David Oderberg. Now, the purpose of this video is not to prove God's existence, but this is just a small sample of the videos to come. That philosophy is a tool to explore the world may seem obvious to some, but it's important that we establish this epistemic fact before we argue for God's existence. Which brings us to the next point. Even on the supposition that we can explore reality through philosophy, how is it possible that miracles occur? To investigate this point, let us consider the objections of an atheist philosopher, David Hume. David Hume writes, "A miracle is a violation of the laws of nature, and as a firm and unalterable experience has established these laws, the proof against a miracle from the very nature of the fact is as entire as any argument from experience can possibly be imagined. It is a miracle that a dead man should come to life, because that has never been observed in any age or country. There must therefore be a uniform experience against every miraculous event, otherwise the event would not merit that appellation." David Hume, An Inquiry Concerning Human Understanding, 10, page 76 to 77. Now, we may understand Hume's objections as so. Objection 1, miracles violate the laws of nature, but the laws of nature can't be violated. Therefore, miracles are not true. And objection 2, our experiences of the laws of nature makes miracles very improbable. In response to the first objection, it's a misunderstanding of the proper definition of what a miracle is. According to St. Thomas Aquinas, who comes hundreds of years before David Hume, he writes, "Works done by God outside the order usually observed in things is the definition of a miracle." Summa Contra Gentiles 3, chapter 101. Now, it is not a supposed violation of the natural laws, but a higher order cause outside the natural order causally interacting with it is what we can understand God's miracles to be. One may recall the law of conservation of energy, which is that energy can't be created or destroyed in a closed system. And wouldn't miracles violate this? After all, Jesus creating water from wine sure seems to violate this law. However, for Christians, the universe is not a closed system, as God is the primary cause of all things he sustains in the universe, and all things in the natural world are secondary causes operating under God's direction. Hence, St. Thomas Aquinas says, "Thus God can do something outside such order, for he is not subject to the order of secondary causes, but on the contrary, the order is subject to him." Summa Theologiae Prima Pars, question 105, article 6. And consider this analogy offered by C.S. Lewis. He says, "If this week I put £4,000 in my drawer, but then suppose when I next open the drawer, I find only £1,000. What shall I conclude? That the laws of arithmetic have been broken? Certainly not. I might more reasonably conclude that some thief has broken the laws of the state and stolen £3,000 out of my drawer. Furthermore, it would be ludicrous to claim that the laws of arithmetic made it impossible to believe in the existence of such a thief or the possibility of his intervention. On the contrary, it is the normal working of these laws that have exposed the existence and activity of the thief. Similarly, the laws of nature say nothing outside of the natural order, and thus could not preclude the existence of miracles or of God. The more relevant question to this would be, do miracles violate the laws of logic? For a miracle could not be impossible. So let us consider the following miracle: Moses split the Red Sea. Now there are three commonly accepted laws of logic, which is the law of excluded middle, the law of identity, and the law of non-contradiction. Moses splitting the Red Sea does not violate the law of excluded middle, as this does not result in any middle ground of any truth proposition and its negation. And this does not violate the law of identity, as this does not result in a P and not P, or for example, a Moses and not Moses statement. And lastly, this does not violate the law of non-contradiction, because this doesn't result in any event being simultaneously true and untrue. Now, in response to the second point, that our experiences make the events of miracles unlikely, I reply, although Hume wants to speak of our experience establishing the improbability of miracles, he's not evaluated all of human experience. Furthermore, much of human experience includes people who have claimed to have witnessed miracles. For example, consider the witnesses of the miracle of the sun in Fatima. Hume may object by saying, all miracle reports are lies, but this would be circular reasoning, as he would now be presupposing the point he is trying to prove, that no one has ever experienced a miracle. Furthermore, a thing may be probable and improbable in different ways. Antecedently prior to the consideration of the circumstances, miracles may be thought of as improbable. However, in consideration of a higher order cause, outside of the natural order, they may very well be probable. Consider that it is improbable that you are affected by a disease that affects 1 in 10 million people. Now, this may be antecedently improbable. However, let's say that there is a breakout of this disease in your neighborhood. Now it becomes much more likely that you've become affected by said disease. This is not to say that we should follow miracles blindly and accept them without any evidence, but it is to say that we should evaluate miracles in view of the evidence. So in consideration of the points provided, it seems that it's obvious that if a God exists, then miracles are possible. So the big question is, does God exist? Which we're going to cover in the following episodes of this series. Now, if you guys enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe and share this video in order to support the channel, and we will produce more episodes like this, showing the rationality of Christianity. God bless.